because this is not a situation that will be left on our grandchildren. We are not going to not know how this ends. It's going to end in our lifetime. And the world that we hand to our children will be the one that we claimed, the one that we can say, that's what we did. Do you want to be remembered for hiding in your house and wearing every mask you were told to and being compliant until basically you're wearing an ankle bracelet in a martial law situation, which is really just a vaccine passport, and you let all that happen? Or are you going to let your children watch you stand up like our founding fathers stood up and say, you know what? No, this is the United States of America. This is the greatest dream. We are the light and beacon of the world. Not here, not now, not ever, not on our time, and not my lifetime. Watch me, kids, as I go out and stand up against a corrupt government. Watch me as I do what Thomas Jefferson told us to do when he said, when a law is unjust, not only do you have the right to disobey it, you are obligated to do so.
Welcome to the 100-Year Lifestyle Podcast, dedicated to you and your loved ones living at 100% for 100 years and beyond. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Plasker. Welcome, everybody, to the 100-Year Lifestyle, where we are transforming health and longevity worldwide so that you and your loved ones can live. I mean, truly live at 100% for 100 years and beyond, not 74% for 83 years or 61% for 94 years. No rotting away. We want high level function, and we have great support in the world and great friends like our amazing guest today, Del Bigtree from the High Wire. Del, welcome, you leader, warrior, friend, comrade in the world. We're so grateful to you.
Oh man, it's great to be here. And I'm just so grateful to all the people out there like yourself that are taking the initiative to, reach out to the people around you and cover these very important, stories right now, these issues around vaccination. So many people have been afraid for so many years. So it's going to take all the warriors stepping up. So it's an honor to be with you today.
Yeah, well, life without fear, that's a big, big, big deal, because if you're not afraid, fear and anger lead to really bad decisions. And when you're not grounded in truth, it leads to fear and anger, which leads to really bad decisions. And a lot of people have been asking me, we did an interview together way back last March, I think it was, or February. And you and I, we both knew what was happening, along with a lot of our comrades out in the world. We knew what was happening in the world. We called it right from day one. And people have been asking me more and more as more people become enlightened, I would say.
Yeah.
They're asking me, Dr. Plasker, how did you know? How did Del know? How did all these other people know? So I want to ask you, how did you know way back when what was going on so early?
Well, I mean, to begin with, I'm not a psychic. I don't have a crystal ball. And if people watch the High Wire, then they know that I do my research, right? And so we knew this was coming because it was pretty much written into documents inside of government agencies. We had Healthy People 2020, which was this, plan in Health and Human Services, which is the mothership of our health department in America. And their plan with Healthy People 2020 was full vaccine uptake of every adult and child in America by the end of 2020. So when you see a deadline looming like that, and you start looking at it and saying, you know what, it looks to me like they're way behind that. I don't know any adults that are going out and getting their measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, like the two that are on the adult schedule. And then, when you ask around, do you even know that there's a CDC adult schedule? Nobody knows that exists. So they were way off of their mark of where they wanted to be. Meanwhile, we were growing, this sort of movement around vaccine hesitancy, or what I call vaccine risk awareness, was growing. And then you watch, we saw Bill Gates, practicing an outbreak with Event 201. And we were watching the WHO had a mission to have everybody in the world vaccinated by 2020. And then putting that together with the fact that, I saw that the most powerful lobby in Washington was pharmaceutical, outspending oil and gas 2-1. So to me, and this is what I was saying in my talks, you can go back 4 years ago and standing on a stage saying, we fight wars in the Middle East for the amount of money that is funded into our government. Oil and gas is buying politicians so that we'll fight wars to hold down to power in oil and gas situations all around the world. Pharma is giving out twice that amount of money, owns twice as much of your politicians. Yet, what do you see that they're getting from it? At the moment, Do you really think it's the 3 to 5% of the unvaccinated kids that may be losing a religious exemption? I assure you that is not what this is about. I said they're coming for you. They're coming for the adults. And I predicted it would be a pandemic, that there would be a pandemic necessary. It was the only way you're going to scare adults into a program that they didn't think they needed. Every adult walking, whether they believed in vaccines or not, whether they're vaccinating their children or not, were walking around thinking, I'm fine. I got all my childhood vaccines. They weren't at the meetings I was at. I was at the CDC. I'm watching the WHO meetings where they're panicked because these diseases that were supposed to have been, vaccinated for and have, lifelong immunity, the vaccines don't last that long. And so we're seeing a resurgence of diseases that were supposed to be sort of vaccine eradicated because adults weren't getting their vaccines. And so knowing all of those things together, it was clear that we were on the precipice of some sort of event that they would need to scare adults into vaccinations. And lo and behold, here we are.
So in other words, you're saying that you knew because they've been saying it for years and you paid attention to something other than mainstream media.
That's it. I don't listen to mainstream media. I don't really listen to anybody. To be honest, my parents raised me, from the time I was a little kid to question authority. Now, it's a tough, messaging for the parent because the parent's the authority the whole time. But my parents raised me to be a critical thinker where I don't trust anything until I see the proof myself. And the proof is not an expert telling you something. If an expert tells you something, then you say, please show me your data. Show me where your information is coming from. Just because you're Tony Fauci, head of the NIH, doesn't mean you're telling me the truth. And now we've seen multiple times he's had to admit to the public that he lies. If he lies once, he lies twice, he lies a million times. So, you have to go and look at the research, and it was all there. It was all there.
Yeah, and it's in the research, and it's also in the anecdotal evidence that we're seeing in our offices all around the country. The doctors of chiropractic that we work with, the 100-year lifestyle people, the holistic people around the country and around the world, we are seeing we raised our families this way. This is not like, how do I do this without shots, drugs, and pediatricians and all this thing? I mean, we literally raised our family without shots, without drugs, and without pediatricians. We had the healthiest kids around. I mean, we used to go drive carpool, and our kids would get in the car, and the carpool kids, where are they today, Dad? Where are they today, Mom? Well, Ruben's sick, Mary's sick. Well, how come we don't get sick? And well, how come they miss school and we don't miss school? Well, let's go on vacation. And that's literally how we raised our families. And there is a phenomenon going on, Del, which I think it's critical for families today. And we're having more and more patients, more and more people coming to see us, our doctors around the country and around the world, and say, what do? I do not trust my doctor anymore. They're run by pharma. They become a puppet of pharma. I do not trust my pediatrician anymore. We had a patient tell us, I think the pediatric industry is the most irrelevant, out of touch industry on the planet today. And so what do? How do I raise my family to be healthy? I don't want to give them drugs. And, we're seeing that people are flocking, like I said, to chiropractors and people like us out in the world. And so what are you hearing and what are you seeing and what do you advise parents to do?
Well, first of all, most people know that before there was the high wire, what really got me into this, was Vaxxed. And before Vaxxed, I was a producer on the CBS talk show, The Doctors, where I won an Emmy Award. But one of the interesting things when I was traveling all over the country with Vaxxed, we had this bus that said Vaxxed on the side of it, and people were signing the names of their injured children. So it was a huge part of our audience that was coming out of hiding because they'd been insulted and humiliated for saying they believed the vaccine had injured their child, whether it was autism or some sort of other neurological or physical disease, or maybe their child died right after a vaccine. But it was funny, I would be standing at the front of the audience and looking out, and then, at the end, people would want to come up and talk to me. And multiple times, I swear, I would see a family like coming at me, and it was like they were glowing. Everybody else was sort of like dim, children with lots of issues, but there would be like a glowing family walking towards me. And I got used to just thinking, oh, here comes the chiropractor. It was incredible. I mean, they're kids just bright-eyed, healthy, parents just vibrant. And honestly, it's to the point now, and I think a lot of people are recognizing this. You can look at a baby. Infants are really easy. You can look at an infant and tell whether they're vaccinated or not immediately. And people would come to me and say, we're deciding because of this movie or because of the work that you're doing, we're thinking we might not vaccinate our next child. And they would say it like trepidatiously, like as though they were going out on some, journey into the outback without any guides, and that's what, for me, when I first, came out with Vax, the big, headline was, former, producer of The Doctors medical talk show is now against vaccines. But the truth is I hadn't been vaccinated as a child. And so it, at a certain point, I wasn't lying. It's just nobody asked me. And it was a really, really made people think twice that a medical producer was, talking about vaccines. But eventually I realized I got to come out about who I am, because these parents, they think they're all alone. They think that this is like that they're risking their child's life. Yet I'm fine. And I started saying, look, at every, how do I raise my child without a doctor? I said, go to any chiropractor in the world.
Yeah.
They're not vaccinating their kids. Or if you're even thinking about, maybe I don't want to vaccinate my children, go talk to a chiropractor. See if you can just hang a day, go have lunch with them and their family and the kids, and look what they look like. And so, growing up, the only sort of medicine that we had in my family, my mom was really big into sort of mind over matter and, healing yourself, your mind. I wasn't allowed a Band-Aid ever. We didn't even get like essential oils to put on a wound. My mom would say, your body's designed to heal itself.
Wow,
the one
love
thing
that.
and it was really very much intuition for her. She was just a hippie, 1960s, grew up as a human pincushion. She was Native American. So the local doctor would just test things on her and her family all the time to make their healthcare cheaper. So they're really used because of the situation they were in, poor. But she grew up and said, I'm not going to do that to my kids. I was sick all the time. Doctors only made me sick. So the only person I really ever saw was an occasional chiropractor. We weren't into sort of constant care, which I do now. But, we'd go when I'd have a ski accident or I was really out of whack, get back into alignment. But the truth is look at what this pandemic has done. I mean, one of the things you're talking about, there's so much fear right now, as though, and I hear people like, we're going to lose this. It's like, what are you talking about? This is the enlightenment that is taking place. This is the birth of the new world, and I don't mean the new world order. I mean the new world, where chiropractic is coming to the forefront. When they shut down all of their hospitals for the last year and a half of this pandemic and nobody could get any treatment, where did you go? The only people that were open, that were still, considered necessary, were chiropractors. So your doors were open, and every chiropractor I'm talking to just said, I had one of the best years I've ever had. And I think people are waking up. I don't need a doctor. And I say this, I have 2 kids, Ever and Thea, my son and daughter. Never been to a pediatrician. I mean, literally the only thing we've ever used a pediatrician for is we called one to our house after our home birth, said, can you weigh him, say that he's alive, write whatever, fill out whatever ticket you need so I can, put it in to get their birth certificate, and then we were done. There is no need for a pediatrician. I mean, if you think about it, all a pediatrician is there to do is to vaccinate your child. That's all they do. And frankly, they don't even do it themselves. Some nurse does it, and they don't know what's in it. If you want to, test your pediatrician, how talented they are, I would say ask them one question. Please list for me the ingredients in the DTaP vaccine that you want to give my child this week. And they'll say, well, it's got a lot of things, it's got, no. I want the exact list of ingredients of what you're about to inject in my child. Well, I'll have to go get the ingredients list. I want you to say at that moment, you know what? That's what Del Bigtree said you'd say. And now I'm walking out of here, because here's the point. These people have been doing this for decades. If your doctors, however old, they've been 30 years doing this. You mean to tell me there's only 16 vaccines they're giving your kid? They don't know what's in them? Because go out after really dismayed by your doctor, go to a local restaurant right down the street, go in there and test the waiter. Say, you know what? I have a food allergy. I'd like to know all the ingredients and pick any dish on the menu. And a waiter can tell you what is in every single dish. And there's 100 dishes, not 16 on that menu. And then ask yourself if you're impressed with the talent level and the care with which the doctors are handling this. They don't know what they're talking about. And other than vaccinations, all they do is weigh your child. If you have any other situations where your child really is sick or has any problem, they're going to send you off to a specialist. So they are literally the most irrelevant, face of medicine that exists on this planet.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And certainly in a blood and guts crisis, you're going to go to the hospital or someplace, a life-threatening emergency. Right. But for ongoing wellness care, lifestyle care, staying healthy. I mean, we knew way back. I mean, I went to school 1982 to 1985. I've just celebrated my 35th year in practice and training chiropractors, doctors, holistic people all over the world. And, it's kind of exciting because when I look back 1982 to 1985 being in school, 1986 was the act. I didn't go to school in 1982 to 1985 to become an activist. But man, in Atlanta, Georgia, at Life University, Life Chiropractic College, when I was going to school, NVIC was growing. They were having demonstrations way back because they did not want that act to pass. And it was not as bad as it is now because not as many people were aware, but it was really, there were a lot of protests that were going on back then. And when that act passed, everything went to hell. And I remember when Robert Mendelsohn, he spoke out. He was the pediatrician of the day. He wrote a book, How to Raise a Healthy Child in Spite of Your Doctor. That was his book, coming from a pediatrician. And we read that book, and my wife and I, we realized that from a pediatrician's perspective, and he was a huge fan of chiropractic. He was a huge chiropractic supporter, endorser. And we figured, you know what? If we had a scale, a tape measure, and common sense, and a chiropractor, we wouldn't need to be seeing the pediatrician ongoing. That's pretty much what he talked about in his book, which we give out like crazy. It's still available today. And now here we are. And I remember saying, if 1986 was the act, 2020 was the coup. And what you said is really important, Del. This is not the new world order. This is the new world. And we have a say-so. And I think the new world order would not like us to have a say-so, but more and more people are stepping up, and we are going to have a say in this new world. And it is really opening us for us. So my son, he asked me, he's a chiropractor, practices in Oregon with my daughter. It's Dr. Jacobson and Dr. Emily. I work with Dr. Corey here in Marietta, Georgia. And my son asked me when we were together, he asked me this question, which kind of took my heart, like, man, Eric, you got to step up to the plate and be a warrior more than ever. You got to at least be at least 1/1,000,000th of what Del is doing out there in the world. But he asked me, Del, this question. He asked me, Dad, how's it going to end? And my answer to him was, it depends who wins. Mm-hmm. How would you answer that question for all of our listeners, and what can we do about it?
Well, that's the question, obviously, I get all the time. And one of the things I really, talk about is sort of the spiritual side of this. This is a war that goes beyond medicine and science. This is truly a spiritual war. They're going after, these people that are in charge believe that they are gods. They do not believe in God. They don't believe in anything bigger than them. They live and reign by complete fear. It's everything that we've, if you ever studied the Bible, but really almost any, prophetic teaching out there says the same thing, that you will be made to be afraid, and that fear will draw you away from God. But, one of the things when I talk about the creation story a lot, when I talk about vaccines and this idea that, we were created in the image and likeness of God, or, as was put so beautifully by B.J. Palmer, your innate immune system, your innate did not leave you, without, and leave you masterless. That master is within. It is always there with you, always completely, everything that Jesus ever said. But when we look at these ideas, it's our desire to want to know how this ends. That is the beginning of the death of humanity. Because it means we're afraid. It means we're afraid. We don't want to come out our door if we don't know where we're going. We don't want to go out unless I know how this ends. I don't want to fight unless someone tells me I'm going to win. And that is a life without faith. And that question comes from a lack of faith. When we hear ourselves asking that question, that's a really good moment to say, you know what, I'm off balance. I'm listening to too much of the media. They're making me afraid. And now I'm afraid to do anything because no one can tell me how this ends. Only God decides how this ends. The only thing we control is how we live in the moment, and what we carry is our burden. And to me, in the moment, what I've said to people, they'll come up to me and say, Del, thank you for your sacrifice. I'm getting really tired of hearing that, because the truth is it's not a sacrifice. I'm living my best life. I'm striving to be every day the best human being that I can be, because there's no guarantee how long I'm going to be on this planet. I could do something as stupid as accidentally step off a curb and get hit by a bus tomorrow, and all of it won't have mattered, or it will have mattered, just depending on what people think to themselves. But the point is at the end of every day, if this is my last day, and it's sort of a Native American proverb, to sort of, say, it's a good day to die, meaning I did everything that I could do in that day to be the greatest person that I could be. And if I die today, then I will die at peace, knowing that I put everything into it. If every one of us really starts listening to that intuition inside of us, that thing that guides people to decide to be chiropractors when everyone else is saying they're crazy, that stands up and fights for what they believe in, stands up at a school board meeting and says, you know what, I've never done this before, I'm just a mother, but I have had it, I'm going to speak my truth here and now. Those people are living in heaven. They're living in the paradise. They're living in a world where they have the power, and they truly are, I think in many ways enlightened beings. It's possible for all of us. So we've got to step out in faith. My life really shifted when I got involved with VAX. I felt like I lost my long-term vision. I'm a producer. I think out all the problems ahead of time. But I'll tell you, the moment I decided that I was going to do something that I knew could just destroy my career and everything else, It made me vulnerable in a way, but there was a beauty because I said, now it's up to you, God. I'm handing everything over. And I feel like every day I take steps out into space, and then there's just solid, beautiful land under me. And the miracles are happening every single day walking that space. So let go of what the end means. Live your best day today. Do what you're being guided to do, what God's asking you to do. And I assure you, God never loses and never has. No Hitler has ever taken over the world. It has never lasted more than a few years. Stalin, China, none of it. All of the atrocities, no nuclear bomb, no, we never killed each other and blew ourselves off to this planet. There's something more divine that is going on here, but it is not going to fix itself. It needs us to do our job and do our part. So let go of how this all ends. I can only tell you that the miracles I'm seeing, this doesn't happen unless there's a greater force that wants us to win. So we must stand up now and become the warriors that it would take to win.
Yeah, and I love that. And, we talk a lot about human potential, and what you're talking about is, having faith in the world. I also feel more alive maybe than I ever have in my whole life. And the people that we work with, same thing. And, it's interesting, having more faith in medicine or pharma than the miracle of life. Two cells come together, form 80 quadrillion cells, and they have the potential from that moment of conception to live an active, healthy, quality life to 80, 90, 100 years and beyond. Who knows what human potential is really all about. And, we hear about 100-year-old people that are healing from COVID, yet at the same time, this is such an important point in this conversation. At the same time, we see the life expectancy going down. And people are saying, why is that happening, Dr. Plasker? Is it because people are dying? The older people are dying, more old people are dying. And the answer is no, it's because the younger people are dying younger and sicker than ever. The old people, they have lived through multiple epidemics, multiple pandemics. They've lived through World War I, World War II, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Vietnam, Afghanistan War, Iraqi War, and this insane war that we are in right now. And they have lived through it all. And it's so important for people to know that. And that's why I appreciate you coming on. I know you're a busy guy, and I appreciate you coming on because there's so many parallel audiences out here that are coming together, and we feel like we're all alone. So for you to be here and talk about these things with our audience, people getting adjusted, eating healthier, fighting the good fight, living purposeful is really so important. And, we have to talk about I Can. I've been a supporter of ICANN for a really long time, and I'm so grateful for what ICANN, the Informed Consent Action Network, is doing. On our last interview, we talked about Nazi Germany, informed consent, all of those things. Yeah. And I love what you're doing with the ICANN network, and I love that it's supporting the high wire and that you're not taking corporate endorsements and things like that, but you're really staying true to the mission and to the people. That's why my wife and I, Lisa and I, support you. So talk about ICANN. How can people get involved? How can people support what you're doing? Because it is worthy of all of our support.
So after Vaxxed, when we were touring the nation, one of the things that was happening was all of these people were coming up and telling their own stories and wanting to be in front of a video camera talking about the vaccine injuries. And I started hearing that, Vaxxed was only about the MMR vaccine, the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, and autism. But these parents were saying, my child never got to the MMR vaccine. We lost him, into autism after the DTaP vaccine. Or my daughter was paralyzed by the Gardasil, HPV vaccine, and she was a star athlete prior to that moment. Or my child died right after a flu shot. And so I started realizing when people would ask me, Del, your film's just about the MMR vaccine. What about all the other vaccines? And I didn't have an answer. So I started my own nonprofit, the Informed Consent Action Network. And there's several things that we knew needed to happen. Number one, since vaccines are totally protected from liability and you cannot sue the manufacturer, I was looking for who can we sue? Like what can we go after? And, as the miracles, that add up, one of them was meeting Aaron Siri, who's a brilliant lawyer, was out of New York. He had been the only lawyer I'd ever seen. He'd won a flu shot case where they were trying to mandate a flu shot for preschoolers in New York City, and he won that. So I got together with him, and we really got down to talking. He said, look, you can't sue the manufacturer, Del, but I think if we look into the 1986 Act, that one you're talking about, that law that was passed that took liability away, it put liability on our government. And there's certain things our government is supposed to be doing. Let's investigate if they are, and if they're not, let's sue them. And that's what we've done. We sued and won against the National Institute of Health, FDA, the CDC, Health and Human Services. So, for instance, now this has been, this is about 4 years we've been doing this work. And then I started the high wire because look, if a lawsuit wins in a forest and no one is there to hear it,
Right.
did it really happen? And so we knew the media was never going to cover this. So I started my own media network, with the high wire, so that we could get the information out as we discovered it, as we won these lawsuits. And so that's what the high wire became. And then because of that work, world-renowned scientists from all over the world started calling us and saying, you're the only one that seems to understand what's really going on here. Can I start supplying you with information? So we have scientists that come on, world-renowned scientists like Geert Vanden Bosch. We've got Dr. Robert Malone just came on a few weeks ago, inventor of the mRNA vaccine technology. I mean, the best of the best are, so now coming on. But behind the scenes are whistleblowers that don't want to be visible, that are supplying us with information from all around the world, from inside of health departments, inside the CDC, inside the FDA. All of that is made possible because I don't take any funding from anybody. I don't take funding from pharma. I don't take funding from oil and gas or diapers or even vitamin companies. I mean, not to put anyone down, but obviously, I travel to all these conventions, and they always have those people out there, selling great vitamins and treatments. And they say, Del, I'd love to have my product on your show. I said, you know what? I'm sure the product is great, but I don't want anyone to be telling me what I can and cannot investigate. And I don't want anyone to say, you know what, that wasn't anti-vaccine enough for me, or that was too anti-vaccine. I mean, everyone has an opinion, and that's the problem with sponsors. I came from television, and I brought people from CBS. I have two producers that work with me, and then some brilliant minds from other, spaces in sort of entertainment and things like that. But our dream was, what if we could do a talk show like we did on the doctors? Only nobody gets to tell us what we can and can't investigate. We get to go wherever we want, wherever the people that are writing in their comments, the questions they're asking, and we can ask them, and it doesn't matter what the answer is. That freedom doesn't exist on television. You are always controlled by your sponsors, and that's why having a nonprofit that is allowing us to create the Highwire educational program and having people just donate. We like to have them just donate on a monthly basis, almost like a subscription to Netflix or even to your cable company. I say you're funding CNN and Fox and MSNBC with your television on the wall. You're paying for it. You're funding them to lie to you all the time. Whereas the high wire, not only do we give you information, but I'm totally transparent. When you watch our show and you sign up to our newsletter, our show is on Thursday. On Monday, you receive a hyperlink to every single study, peer-reviewed journal, all of my information, where it comes from. I put it in your hands so that, when the media says Del cherry picks this information, you can read it all and come to your own conclusions. I'm not asking anyone to say, hey, Del Bigtree said on the high wire, and this is the truth. No. That we got to get out of that paradigm. We got to stop quoting our news anchors as though they're gods or Tony Fauci. I'm putting the proof in people's hands so they can say it's written right here in the Health and Human Services own document. This is a study by the WHO that said this. That's how the high wire acts. We call it the high wire protocol. It's total transparency, and we're demanding that any news agency, certainly anyone that wants to sort of say that we're spreading misinformation, I dare them to use that protocol. So in the end, we have this incredible, powerful legal arm. And when you ask yourself, we're also now getting into, litigation on suits in universities and employers all around the nation. We funded, people that donate to ICANN. There's things like there was 100 Hasidic Jewish in the Hasidic Jewish community in New York during the measles outbreak that were, banned from their own synagogues. They couldn't walk down the street. They were being fined. It was like freaking Nazi Germany. We stepped up to those that didn't have enough funding and said, we will fight that suit for you. And we fought for 100 different people against the fine that they'd received for not getting their MMR vaccine. We won 92 of those cases, and about 8 of them may go to the Supreme Court. We'll fight them all the way there because this is how we set precedent. And one of the things that just very clearly explain why I'm so passionate about the legal side and Aaron Siri is all of the Biden administration, the pressure by this vaccine is being driven really by one legal case that happened in 1905 called Jacobson versus Massachusetts. Jacobson was a minister. He didn't want the smallpox vaccine. Massachusetts had a mandated smallpox vaccine. And he said, no, I'm not taking it. Now, he needed to pay a $5 fine is what it was if you decided not to take it. He refused. He said, this goes against my religious beliefs. He lost. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. He fought it there. And the Supreme Court decided that in a state of emergency, his religious beliefs didn't really protect him. And they ordered him to pay the $5 fine. That 1905 decision is what is allowing Joe Biden to think that he has the power to mandate vaccines on all of us. I even debated Alan Dershowitz on this, who came forward. The great, constitutional attorney said the government could drag you into a hospital and plunge a needle in your arm. There's nothing you can do about it because of Jacobson versus Massachusetts. You can go to the high wire if you want to see my debate with him. It's fantastic. But in the end, he conceded, you know what, you're probably right. And if you want to know what I was right about, check out that debate. But in the end, we need great lawyers on the best cases in this nation. Whether it's going to be Robert Kennedy Jr. or Aaron Siri. And by the way, either one of us gets there, we all work together, whoever has the best case. But I keep wanting to put Aaron Siri, every time we see a good case that has the right, mechanisms that we think could possibly go all the way to the Supreme Court to override and overcome Jacobson, to put a new modern world. I mean, we have toilets now, we have clean running water. It's not 1905. And what vaccines, how they're made, what they do is so completely different. But the only way, we've got a lot of lawyers out there, they're sort of in there for the money, or maybe they're trying to do what's right, but they don't have the talent that Aaron Siri does. And so by donating to ICANN, you allow me to say, Aaron, go after that case, any case. We're funded. We're going to keep trying to find the best cases so that we can undo Jacobson. All of those, I know it's a mouthful, but we got a lot going on. And if you watch the High Wire, we keep you up to date. You get newsletters on all the legal wins and things that we're doing. But it really is making a difference. We have an interactive now conversation with the FDA on a constant basis. They don't just not take our phone calls because we've won lawsuits against them now. So when we have demands, we make them, provide the information. So this world is changing really fast. And I think ICANN, and certainly our show, The High Wire, is a part of that. And so if anyone wants to look at ICANN, that website is iCanDecide.org. Remember, you always have choice. iCanDecide.org. And The High Wire, thehighwire.com is our weekly show on every Thursday.
Love that. Well, you're doing such great stuff. And you're not just pointing out the research. I want to point out to everybody is you're also pointing out and finding the contradictions. And there are so many contradictions, which is what makes this, is making so many people angry. For example, is this really a pandemic? And if kids are 99.998% healing, why are we mandating vaccines on them? And we can go on and on about that. Go to the High Wire to why everything that we just talked about is on the High Wire. And so the other thing I want to mention real quick is I believe the criminal side of this is going to begin to come out, which is why the whistleblowers are so important. And I love that you're doing all of that behind the scene, talking about mandates, how to handle all the mandates. Go to the High Wire for that too. They're really doing amazing things. I want to leave with a final thought. I want to go back to World War II. It's how we ended our last discussion. I remember going to Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum, and seeing it's an eerie place. And if you've never been in Israel to that museum, or some of the others as well, but in Israel, they have this Hall of Names, which you can look it up. You can Google it. Look up Yad Vashem, a Holocaust Museum Hall of Names. And you'll see this big dome, it's like a Capitol building dome with, on the inside of the dome are these images, pictures, photographs of many of the people that died in the Holocaust. And here's what got to me chillingly, Del, is that how many highly intellectual, educated people, just like sheep, followed the crowd, got online, got on the train, and are no longer here and got eliminated from the planet because they complied, they didn't speak out, they were afraid, just like we talked. And so here we are, we have so many people on the fence that are ready to come out and have faith over fear, trust their bodies, their innate intelligence, trust this movement that's happening out in the world. Speaking to those people right now, as well as the warriors that are fighting and the chiropractic warriors that are our friends and their patients and communities. Give us a last minute thought.
Well, I mean, the thought that hit me, just as you said it, is not only did you have people that, kept thinking this isn't really happening. At first I can't go to this side of town. Now I can't go into these stores. They just kept backing their way into the shadows until there was no space left except a train car. But then think about all of those that were compliant that went along with it on the other side, that ended up turning people in, or even those that just didn't say anything and quietly let it happen out in front of their doors or their neighbor. They watched their neighbors dragged out and didn't do anything or say anything. I was talking to Kevin Jenkins, who you well know, and you said you were with last week, and he said, I went into a restaurant and this, this host, this young man was saying, look, we have a mask policy. He's like, are you going to discriminate against me? Do you realize 60 years ago I couldn't come to this restaurant either, and now I can, and now you're telling me I can't? I'm a black man. You really think?" He's like, "Well, it has nothing to do with that. It's not my fault, sir. It's the governor, or my boss." He's like, "Look, you're the one right here. You're the one responsible. I'm not going to hold you. I don't care what you're being told to do. If you carry out this order, then you are the one that is committing the crime, and that is the truth. We cannot accept, that's what I'm being told right now. Doctors and nurses are coming up to me and saying, "I'm going to lose my job if I don't get vaccinated. I don't know what to do." I say, "Why do you want to keep that job? You
Right.
are
Beautiful.
murdering people. The hospitals in America are murdering people. You are denying them access to known treatments like hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, proven in thousands of studies, tens of thousands of people healed, Zelenko and Didier Raoult, and all of these guys having over a 90% success rate across the world. The studies show that these drugs are 85% effective at reducing, death and hospitalization. Yet in hospitals, you can't get it. Oh, and for the first time, you're sending people home when they come in. Now, all of a sudden, we don't believe in early treatment. You have COVID, but your oxygen levels aren't bad enough. Go home. We're not giving you anything until you are about to die. Your lips are blue. Then come in. We're giving you remdesivir, which is a failed Ebola drug that will shut down your kidneys, put you on a ventilator, and murder you. 9 out of 10 of you will be
And we
dead
didn't
when I'm
even
all done.
address the vulnerability issue, all
No.
the vulnerabilities. We haven't even gotten there. That's a topic for another day.
Look at what we're talking about. We're talking about doctors who I know and nurses who I know got into that profession to do what was right. They signed the Hippocratic Oath. And now, blindly, because they're being told by Tony Fauci, ivermectin doesn't work and hydroxychloroquine doesn't work, they are taking a bad common cold, and they are killing people. Anyone that says, Del, you're responsible. I get these newspapers like New York Times or whoever will say, "Don't you feel responsible for the 700,000 people that have died?" That I was like, why would I be responsible? Who I hold responsible is Tony Fauci, who's treating all of America like the Tuskegee experiment. We could have given antibiotics to those people that had syphilis, but you wanted to study them. That's exactly what's happening here. We have drugs that can take care of us. And look, there are vitamins too before you ever get to that point, so you never even have to deal with that. But if you do end up in a situation, we have now got nurses and doctors that are responsible for the greatest, example of medical malpractice, since Nazi Germany. We now have 700,000 people died. I would say at least, I think Vladimir Zelenko, who has healed his people, would say 500,000 of those at least were murdered by medical malpractice. And so this is the world we live in. Are you going to go along with it? Or is this the United States of America? That's just the way it is because Tony Fauci said so, or Joe Biden said so. We only make an agreement to listen to them. And it's only ours to make an agreement that they no longer represent us. Don't forget, the government doesn't control us. We control our government.
Amen.
And this is why we have really lost track. We don't have a constitution that gives us our rights. We have rights endowed into us by God. The Constitution only controls the government and what it's allowed to do when it comes to our God-given rights. We have really let an education system and our complacency sort of mix up our brains so that we're standing on our heads. Turn around, stand up on your feet, and recognize that this is our time. And the one thing that I want to end with is the people that are afraid right now or really depressed and looking around them, "Oh my God, I can't believe how many people are doing yada yada, whatever, wearing their mask, getting the vaccine, yada." Stop focusing on them. Start focusing on the fact that under a $4 billion ad campaign, with every news agency in our country bludgeoning us with this ridiculous pandemic, bludgeoning us with flatten the curve in 14 days, wait a month, wait 2 months, wait 6 months, a year, and oh my God, this virus is going to be with us until the end of time. Look at all of that that's hit us, and yet in this current moment, they only managed to vaccinate 57% of America. 43% of America said no. There is something alive right now. There is something inside of us, whether we're going to chiropractors or not, whether we know what it's about or not. We have doctors and nurses walking out. Let's focus on them, not on the ones that are murdering people, but on the ones that are saying, "No, I am not doing it. I'm not doing it to me. I'm not killing any more people." They're walking out of hospitals. Police officers and firefighters and union workers, across the Brooklyn Bridge by the tens of thousands saying no against the vaccine. We have 24 attorney generals in our country, in the United States of America, saying, "Our body, our choice. You decide to bring this to my state, and we are going to sue you, Joe Biden." This is fantastic. We live in a transformational moment. So stop whining. Stop asking yourself the question, is this really happening? Get in the game. For all the chiropractors out there, many who have fought, made backs possible, invested and put their money where their mouth is. But now is the time. Chiropractic is leading the way. Because why? Because you've always talked about the innate immune system. You understand the innate, something that great scientists like Geert Vanden Bosch is now saying, forget the vaccine. Your innate immune system is the only chance we have. This is one, they say, may you live in interesting times. May you be so blessed. Well, if interesting times is a blessing, then we are the most blessed people of all times, because this is not a situation that will be left on our grandchildren. We are not going to not know how this ends. It's going to end in our lifetime. And the world that we hand to our children will be the one that we claim, the one that we can say, that's what we did. Do you want to be remembered for hiding in your house and wearing every mask you were told to and being compliant until basically you're wearing an ankle bracelet in a martial law situation, which is really just a vaccine passport, and you let all that happen? Or are you going to let your children watch you stand up like our founding fathers stood up and say, you know what? No, this is the United States of America. This is the greatest dream. We are the light and beacon of the world, not here, not now, not ever, not on our time, and not my lifetime. Watch me, kids, as I go out and stand up against a corrupt government. Watch me as I do what Thomas Jefferson told us to do when he said, when a law is unjust, not only do you have the right to disobey it, you are obligated to do so. We are obligated by the commandments that come through our Constitution, and more than that, we are obligated right now by the Creator of all things to stand up for humanity, stand up for our innate immune system, to stand up for freedom. Whether you want to vaccinate or you don't, it's your body, it's your choice. And we will not lead this world to that promised land if we give up control of our bodies. This is an exciting and beautiful time. We get to bring in that new age. We get to enlighten the world. Be thankful. Realize how blessed we are. And I'll see you on the other side.
Mic drop. Amen. Thank you. Everybody, go to thehighwire.com, go to ican.org, icandecide.org, donate, get involved. Go to 100yearlifestyle.com, download our free ebook, Becoming a Least Vulnerable Person, Empower Yourself and Your Family. Del, love and appreciate you, side by side, wherever we go, sometimes the same stage, lots of time, different stages. We are all so grateful for your efforts and your work. Keep it up. Godspeed. Love you, man.
Power to the people.
Thank you so much for joining us on the 100-Year Lifestyle Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have topics that you want us to cover, people you want us to interview, maybe you have some stories that you want to share, stories of yourself, loved ones, people in your life, we would love to hear from you and share your story. Please email us at my100@100yearlifestyle.com. And remember, nobody wants to get to 100 or even 50, 60, or 70 for that matter, crippled, broke, and alone. So please share the 100-Year Lifestyle, all of our podcasts, social media pages, website, with your family, friends, and coworkers so they can take this journey with you. And until next time, adjust your lifestyle. Live your best life today and every day on the road to a sensational century. Dr. Plasker, signing off.